Hey guys, welcome to the 36th C programming tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at integral data types. And integral data types are basically just any data type that stores only integers. So that means that these integral data types do not store fractions or decimals. So let's go ahead right here and take a look at the two integral data types that we already know of. The first is a character. So we can just say char c, and remember from the previous tutorial that we can set a character equal to a number. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this character equal to its maximum value, which is 127. So I'm just going to say 127 right here. And then following this, I'm just going to leave a comment saying 1 byte, since that's the size of a character. Alright, now let's go ahead and take a look at the second and the last integral data type that we already know, and that's integer, or int. So I can just say int I equals, and then I'm just going to go ahead and set this equal to its approximate maximum. And the maximum value for an integer is approximately 2,147,000,000. So I'm just going to say 2,147,000,000. Alright, and then following this, I'm just going to go ahead and put 4 bytes, since that's the size of an integer on my computer. Alright, so here are the two integral data types that we already know, char and int. In between char and int, there is another integral data type called short. So I'm just going to say short right here. I'll call it s, and we'll set it equal to 32,000, since that's approximately its maximum. And then a short takes up 2 bytes of memory, so I'm just going to put 2 bytes right there. Alright, and then following an integer comes the long variable type. So I'm just going to say long, I'll call it L, and like the integer, I'm going to go ahead and set it equal to 2,147,000,000. And that's because on my computer, the size of a long and the size of an int are the exact same. They're both 4 bytes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put 4 bytes right here. But on your computer, it could be a little bit different. Your long could be a little bit bigger. But on my computer, it's 4 bytes. Alright, and then after the long comes the long. So it's just long, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this LL. And the maximum value for a long is 2 to the 63rd power. So that's a huge number. So right here, I'm just going to go ahead and put a bunch of numbers to signify that the maximum value for a long is really big, meaning that you can store huge numbers inside of these. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put 8 bytes after it, because that's how much memory a long takes up, at least on my computer. Alright, now here are all of the integral data types that we're going to be looking at. Now let me just go ahead and show you some alternate ways of representing them. So here we just have short s. Well, you can also say short int. Typically I would never do it this way, but just in case you ever were to see this on the internet or something, a short int is the exact same thing as just a regular short. And same thing with a long, you can do long int if you really wanted to, and a long int is the exact same thing as just a regular long, and same thing with a long, you can say long int, and that's the exact same thing as long. Alright, so now like I said, on different people's computers the size of all these different variable types can change. However, this statement right here will always be true. So the size of a character is always going to equal 1. And the size of a short is always going to be greater than or equal to the size of a character. The size of an integer is always going to be greater than or equal to the size of a short. The size of a long is always going to be greater than or equal to the size of an int. And on my computer, it just so happens that the size of a long is the exact same size as an int, so right here they'd be equal. And the size of a long is always greater than or equal to the size of a regular long. Alright, so now let's take a look at printing out all these different variable types. So the first thing that we're going to do right here is just print out this character called C. So we're going to say printf, and whenever you're printing out a character as a number, you can just do %i, and I'm just going to do comma C, since the name of our character variable is called C right here. So let's just go ahead and run this, and we should get 127 out onto the screen. Yep, perfect. Now if we wanted to print out a short, we can just go ahead and do %i, just like for the character. So we're just going to go ahead and print out our short called s. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this, and we should get 32,000 out onto the screen. Perfect. And if we wanted to print out an integer, we can obviously do just %i for integer. And I'll print out my integer variable called I right here. That worked good. Alright, now let's go ahead and look at printing out a long int, or just a long. Now since on my computer the size of an int and the size of a long are the exact same, I can just go ahead and do %i and print out my long, and everything will work fine. However, if on your computer the size of a long and the size of an int are not the exact same, then this won't work right here. You'll have to do %li for long int. And now if I were to run this, it'll work the exact same. However, I strongly suggest whenever you're printing out a long onto the screen, you do %li, because if you were to give this program to someone else and on their computer the size of an int and the size of a long were different, then this wouldn't work properly. So whenever you're printing out a long, just remember to do %li for long int. Alright, and whenever you're printing out a long or a long int, you're going to have to do %lli for long int, and then we'll just go ahead and print out the value of our long, which is just called ll. So we should get this number out onto the screen right here. Yep, perfect. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial on integral data types. So, see you guys.